this moment is all there is. Immersing yourself in presence, immersing yourself in what you have right in front of you is all that you can affect, and kind of removes this element of, blaming or allowing the responsibility to be out of your hands. Awareness in anything we do, the consciousness that we bring to the work that we do, what we create in the world, it's generating a ripple effect out there.
Being ready, being open, seeing the cues, and then taking action despite of the fear and despite of whatever you're feeling. When you're in the moment, in the situation, and spirits are very high and you're very involved, you cannot see from perspective. And detach a little bit from whatever is happening and whatever you're feeling, and then come a little later and reflect on it. Because in the moment, your feelings, your emotion, whatever is going on through the moment is carrying you away. We can only tap to our intuition when we really slow down and let space for it.
It's only when we slow down we can notice the subtle signs and the subtle shifts that can kind of signal that there is something that we need to look at here. It's only when we're in that headspace that we can do it, and that's so key. When we know someone so well, we're intuitive about their mood, what they're thinking. You can see when something is off. Where does that come from? Because you know their patterns. Intuition to me is about pattern recognition. You have enough data to know that something has changed. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dreamcatcher Podcast, a place where your dreams can find a voice. I'm your host, Seline Shenoy. Thank you to all of you who return every week to tune in to become a better version of yourself. Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't already, and rate our show if you enjoy this episode. What matters more when it comes to success? Perfect timing or making your own luck? Some people wait for the right moment. Others jump in and make things happen. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. Today, we'll discuss how much timing shapes our lives and how much depends on our efforts. This episode breaks down both sides. You'll get real stories and smart insights to help you make sense of both. Joining me are two special guests, Sahar Milani, an experiential brand specialist and host of the Mindful Makers podcast, and Roche, an experienced MC and a voice for mindfulness and self-compassion. Together, we'll look at where action meets timing. When is the best time to trust the flow? And when should you cut in and move ahead? By the end, you'll see how both can help you unlock new doors. Tune in for tips you can use, ideas to try, and a few prompts that might spark your own next step. Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another podcast discussion on the Dreamcatcher podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about another very interesting topic that is on everybody's mind, especially in the personal growth community, and that is timing and the importance of timing in creating our own success. Now, we've all heard the saying, timing is everything. There are some people who believe that it's important for the stars to align to make their move, while others think that, it's all about grabbing the steering wheel and creating our own luck. So to delve deeper into this ongoing debate, I am joined by the brilliant Sahar Milani and Roche. It's wonderful to have you ladies again. How are you both doing?
Great. Thank you so much. It feels so good to be with you girls.
Back again for number 3. Thanks for having us, Seline. It's really fun to be in the studio with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you back on. And I can tell you that our audience love the both of you based on, the numbers I'm seeing. So I'm so happy that you were able to make it back on the show. And I'm actually really eager to hear your thoughts because I believe that collectively, the three of us have enough life experience to know how opportunities come and go in life and the role that timing and effort play in that sort of process. So I want to start out by asking you, when you hear the term perfect timing, what comes to mind?
To me, it is life guiding you and you being ready to meet whatever is life is throwing at you. Like, if you are not ready and if you are not aware of the signs, no matter how perfect it is, you wouldn't catch that bus.
I think I'd have to agree with Laura. For me, when I hear the phrase perfect timing, there's a sense of awareness and proactivity about it, but also surrender. So I think in a lot of moments in life, especially if we're attached to a certain outcome or we want something to happen, there can be a clinginess about that, especially if we're really investing our energy and our thoughts and our work. But it is quite funny how at that moment where people are just about to give up or they're just about to be like, okay, let's pack this in, you know, what the outcome that they're looking for sometimes happens. And there's this element of surrender to their action, you know, that is balanced. Don't know whether it's perfect, but I do think it's a combination of things happening together.
Mm-hmm. Those are both brilliant answers, and I agree with both of you. When I think about perfect timing, I like to think of the metaphor of traveling in a plane. You know, sometimes the travel time tends to be more, especially when you're going west. It takes longer to get to your destination, but the same route would take less time. It's because when you're going to that destination westward, you have the tailwind. That for me is good timing. But when you're coming back east, you're getting the headwind. That slows you down. Doesn't mean you're not going to get there, but I just feel like you don't have that extra push that good timing has. Mm-hmm. So that's how I see it. I think our whole beliefs about timing are shaped a lot by culture and social scripts. I mean, we've all heard sayings like, make hay while the sun shines, or wait for your ships to come in, kind of plant your seeds during the right season, all of those sort of ideas. And then you have astrology, you have a lot of these metaphysical tools that bring timing into the picture, divine timing, as they like to say in the spiritual community. And I'm wondering, when does our concept of timing, when is it strategic and when is it superstitious? And do both have their place in the way we see our life?
It's a really interesting question. I think I can only answer from a personal perspective on this one, but for example, in Persian culture and Persian history, in Zoroastrianism, the ancient Persian religion, there was a god of time, and there is a god of time, and they basically believe that god of time helps you to work with time, but also rewards activity and action around what you would like from time. And I think that's very interesting from a cultural and theological perspective. But I know from my upbringing and my background, within Persian mysticism and poetry, we had the greats like Hafez and Rumi, and they really refer a lot to how timing has its own flow, but also there is an element of activity around it as well. I think there was a line from Hafez that says, "This moment is all there is." And in that, he basically reminds us that immersing yourself in presence, immersing yourself in what you have right in front of you is all that you can affect, and kind of removes this element of, blaming or allowing the responsibility to be out of your hands. And I really love that. So I think there's also a whole other part about luck in the culture. There's something called Bacht, which is basically your fortune. And there's something called Resmat, which is your fate. And I know in other countries and other languages, it's called Kismet.
Yep.
And looking at all of that in terms of like folklore and symbolism and how luck plays and intertwines with time is really fascinating when you approach it from that perspective. They're not separate, but they almost like brother and sister,
right?
From a cultural perspective.
Yeah, I love that.
So interesting.
Yeah.
So to me, I have lived in countries with different religions. So to me, I like to see the religious aspect of it. Like I was brought up in Spain, which is Christian Catholic. And then I've lived in a few Muslim countries. And then I've spent a lot of time in a Buddhist temple learning about Buddhism. Like I've been going for years. And what I found fascinating is that both Christianity and Islam, that's what I know of, they all say, oh, well, that's God's willing, you know? That's how God wanted it, if God allows it. And it's very engraved in the cultures, in Spain as well. Whereas for Buddhists, they talk about karma. And Buddhists, they talk about the responsibility of your actions. And Buddhists, they talk about when the right causes and circumstances align. And to me, it's fascinating because I was like, it's harder if you're a Buddhist because the whole responsibility is on you. It's not in a divine power that is going to protect you and make things happen. In Buddhism, it's like, well, that's what it is. What did I do in a previous life? What's going on here? Why is, you try to understand the causes and the consequences that led you to that moment. Whereas for Christians and Muslims, it's like, God wanted it that way. So to me, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I love both perspectives. They both have their pros and cons. But what it seems to me is like, I feel like with the whole timing aspect, it can empower us and it can disempower us. Like we got to be careful about how we see it, because if we say that, that's just the cards I've been dealt, or this is just a bad time for me, people can abdicate responsibility and accountability. And that's where I'm concerned about using time as an excuse. Because there are a lot of things that are under our control. I know there's a lot of research done by Angela Duckworth and Malcolm Gladwell about the value of grit and mindset when it comes to creating our opportunities that is not contingent on time and timing. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because we have the whole notion of, okay, timing is important. We have our fate. We have luck coming into the picture. But what about the things that we control, like the things that we do, our perseverance? Can we actually open closed doors by just sheer grit and just believing that we can do it?
Can I?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
I think we open doors when we can first see the door and when we are ready to open that handle. Like if I can give you a personal experience.
Go for it.
When I moved to Dubai 4 years ago, I was coming to work at Expo 2020 Dubai, but I was supposed to do a production job. Now, for years, I had been hosting, acting, emceeing, but I didn't come to do that role. 1 month in, I saw somebody doing an audition for that MC job. And my role was not that. But I went to my boss and said, that's my dream job, to do that on a daily, like to be a resident. My boss said, okay, go for an audition. And I ended up changing it. And I ended up being the resident MC of Expo. What happened was that I saw an opportunity. I saw a door opened, and I had the courage to go through it and to go say, hey, this is what I want to do. Give me an audition. Plus, I was ready. It had been 12 years in the making, so I had material to show them. I was like, listen, this
You
and
had
this.
the experience.
I had the experience. I had the conditions, and then I had the courage to go and ask for it. Then it's not up to me whatever is the outcome is going to be. But had I didn't have that mindset of, okay, let's try.
Yeah.
And I kid you not, when they accepted me, I was like, what have I done? Like, what have I put myself into? There was a lot of shame. Like, gosh, I was here so comfortable in my comfort zone knowing what I'm doing, and now I'm going to be mega exposed. there was a vertigo almost.
Yeah.
But was it divine timing? I don't know. I just saw an opportunity, and then it's up to you to decide what do you want to do in this circumstance. Do you want to go through it and, how do you say, atravesar, like push through, you know?
Yeah. But in your case, you put yourself in a place where the opportunity was there, right? You knew, you had the professional experience, you had the skill set, like you were ripe. So that was timing in terms of you as a professional.
Yeah.
You were ripe for the picking, and they saw that.
Yeah, but they were auditioning other people. I just literally went and say hi.
That was
great.
You need to give yourself more credit. I think you just stood out.
Well, that's what I want to say. Like, I feel like sometimes timing, was it the correct time? Did you see the chance? Because I feel like sometimes life gives us small chances, give us glimpses of opportunities. Do you actually go for it, even if it's scary, or do you let it go?
Right.
So
it's very interesting. I think that it's great when these things align because they allow you to exercise that muscle that you'd been preparing for so long. Like you said, you'd had like 20 years experience in it and you were like ripe and ready and primed. And it's like the perfect catalytic moment.
Preparation meets opportunity.
Exactly. But I also think that, and I'm speaking to people out there now that feel like opportunities don't come their way and that it's hard for them to get a break and that they feel prepared, but they don't see that door to walk through. And the world can be like that. It's a reality that we live in on a daily basis. Not a lot of people get those breaks in life. And I think when our destinies like are shaped between intention, which is what Laura was talking about, and then that awareness and persistence, yes, it can pay off. And sometimes it can't because we lose hope or we don't see through the woods. And to that, I would say it isn't always about grit. Sometimes it's about changing course or treating it as what I used to tell my friends and myself when we were looking for jobs and there were no jobs out there. I would say it's like a treasure hunt. Like, don't pay attention to the no. Don't pay attention to the fact that all these doors are shut. You have to knock on every single door methodically, one by one. Eventually one will open, but keep looking after yourself in the process. Because sometimes grit and persistence can be tiring.
Oh, yes.
But I remember,
you can burn out.
Yeah, 100%. But I remember, I'm a big fan of music, and I always refer to like failure stories in music. And are they really failure stories? Like Madonna was turned down by her record label. The Beatles were told that nobody's interested in guitar music anymore. Like, guitar bands are done. And what Madonna did was she went to different clubs. She made friends with DJs. She put together different recordings so they would be played in clubs. She worked on her dance act. She just basically went through this metamorphosis through every no, and then eventually down the line got signed because her songs were so popular in clubs, not through a record label. And it always makes me think about, yes, having grit, but also being curious about yourself and being playful with the process enough to know when to switch or change direction and come back within.
Yeah.
You know, as someone who can be quite self-critical at times, I know that it can be really hard to constantly be on the grit side. But it's more softer and can lead to really exciting conversations like today when we approach things with a bit of softness and compassion.
Yeah, I love that empathetic take on being in situations where opportunities are not necessarily available, maybe due to systemic problems like poverty, not just unable to get out of one situation, or if you're in certain careers which are highly competitive, like the arts.
Yep, 100%.
How many people, talented people we know who don't get that lucky break.
Yeah.
No matter how many times they try. I mean, I lived in LA for 2 years, and there were so many talented singers, dancers, actors that I kept bumping into as I was networking, and they just living paycheck to paycheck. Like they were barely making any money. So I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes no matter how hard we try, doors won't open. And in those cases, we have to change course, as you said, or pivot or do something else. And another place where timing is such a crucial factor is relationships, meeting our life partner. I don't know about both of you, but I have heard so many stories about couples who met at the right time, when they were ready for something serious, when they were ready to get committed. I've heard of guys who were players, they were playing the field, and then they reach a point in their life where like, okay, I'm ready to settle down now. And the girl who he happens to be dating at that time is the one who becomes a wife. So it's almost like a musical chairs thing, you know? It's like, it's not that the other girls weren't that great. Maybe they were. Maybe they were better, but it was just not the right time. So I'm fascinated by that, about how couples meet. They were at the right place, the right time. There's something else going on there that's not within their control, something that orchestrated their meeting, and timing was a huge factor in that. So
Timing and circumstance.
And circumstances, yes.
Yeah.
Do you have any experiences with that? Do you know anybody who's
I have to think.
experienced that in their life?
Yeah, I mean, reflecting back on all the relationships that I've had in my life, I think sometimes it was just where we were. I don't necessarily think it was timing. I would have met them before and then like met them again later and then started a relationship, and that I would say would have been timing.
Yeah, but that version of them.
That version
Maybe
of them,
they would
yeah.
have evolved more a few years later,
Yeah.
matured, you know?
And sometimes it was just sheer foolishness. I'm not going to say on whose part, but, you know, I mean, sometimes we make these choices and we're like, that wasn't really timing. That was just me not looking properly.
Yeah. I love the fact, you know, both of you were like beaming as I was talking about it. And I'm wondering what's behind those smiles. There's some stories behind those smiles.
Yeah. It was the foolishness that was making me giggle.
Yeah.
To me, I'm a romantic, and
Yeah.
whenever I'm at a wedding, I will cry my eyes out
Aw.
because I just see, and I'm like, this person was roaming around life and met this other person roaming around life, and she fell in love with, or whatever, one fell in love with the other fell in love with the one, and it worked. And to me, it's like a magic thing, you know, to actually find somebody and to fall in love and to be so happily ever after. It's such a magic thing. So I'm always crying at weddings because I find it fascinating and amazing and beautiful and loving. Mm-hmm. And if you want us to get personal, because I think you do, to me, I've been times where I've had a partner, and then relationship ends, and then I see this partner years after, and I'm not attracted at all. And that is because I've realized that the version I was at that point was not the same version that I was when I met that person. And when I evolved in life, my new version was no longer attracted to this version.
Yeah.
Like, my values don't align. Whatever I want to accept is not the same as when I was younger. You know?
Interesting. Yeah, so you were a different version of yourself, and that new version did not find anything
Attractive,
that
no.
draws you in.
Yeah. So it was just time change and conditions changed.
Yeah. Yeah, that speaks to the natural evolution and everyone going at their own pace. You know, I think also like timing from that perspective is worth considering, you know, the seasons in our lives. When is the right time to do this? When is the right time to do that? You know, people tell us, oh, you're too old to do this, or you're too young to consider going down that path. We hear so much about that also,
Yeah.
you know?
But I do think, Seline, that it's not like relationship context or anything really in life can sometimes not be down to timing at all. Sometimes it's just what we're focused on.
Okay.
And that version of Laura who found that partner attractive at that time, yes, she's evolved, but also at that time she was focused more on that kind of personality or that kind of vibe. And there's science behind that, because I know that there's Dr. Tara Stewart from the MIT neuroscientist. She talks about the fact that there's a certain part of our brain that gets activated when we are mentally focused on something, and we prime ourselves for that so that we're sort of ready to receive it when we see it in front of us. Because I don't know if you've ever noticed it before, but for example, a new word will come into your vocabulary and suddenly you start seeing that word everywhere. But it was there before, but you're focused on it now. So I think there's a combination going on when it even comes to relationships. It can be timing, yes, but it's also our focus. And I'm not talking about manifestation here. I'm just talking about how our brains operate and the things that we look at in people and the things we choose to notice versus we don't choose to notice.
And do you think that is a big part of being able to spot opportunities? We are kind of primed to spot, you know, those doors opening, to continue with that metaphor.
I do feel like it's a part.
Yeah.
It's very complex to me. It's not just that there would be only one part to it. I do think that there's...
I mean, those one of the tools.
It's a very... Yeah, I think it is a very important part.
Yeah.
Because awareness in anything we do, this consciousness that we bring to this conversation in front of, you know, you guys right now, ladies, and the consciousness that we bring to the work that we do, what we create in the world, it's generating a ripple effect out there.
Absolutely.
There is this book by Joe Dispenza, Stop Behaving Like Yourself. I read it in Spanish, so I cannot. Deja de ser tú mismo, Stop Being Yourself, or something like that. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
I don't know.
You know Dr. Joe Dispenza?
I do know him.
So there is a book, Stop Being Like Yourself, Stop Behaving Like Yourself. I don't know what. I was reading it in Spanish. That's why I'm confused with the translation. And he said, if you keep behaving the way you keep behaving, nothing will change. So start changing the way you behave. And at that time, there was this very cool event I wanted to go, all about personal development here in the UAE. And tickets at that moment were $5,000. I don't know how, I can't remember how, somebody gave me the somebody gave me the contact of the organizer saying, this is the organizer, reach out to her. And I was feeling, no, shame, why will I go to her? And then I was listening to an episode of that book by Joe Dispenza, and he said, stop doing what you normally do if you want different outcomes. And out of nowhere, I grabbed the phone and I called her. She invited me to go to this event.
Wow.
And the ticket was $5,000. And it was only because I chose to do something different. And there was fear involved. And there was like shame and fear. But I pushed through it, you know? And was it divine timing? I don't know. I just created my own luck.
You know what's divine timing over there? It's getting that message from Joe Dispenza, that particular moment when you were hesitating to call her.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Sometimes we get the messages, the advice. We see certain videos come up in our, you know, YouTube feed, or someone recommends a podcast episode or a book, just when we need it, you know. When the student is ready, the teacher appears, as they say.
I love that.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Have you ever experienced something like that?
Oh, plenty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of the most, I used to think they were just very serendipitous encounters, but I remember the first ever, the second job I ever had in a law firm. I was applying to so many places and nothing was sticking. And one day I was in a coffee shop down the road from my flat in London, and I was studying for one of the exams. And this complete stranger, wonderful lady, was sat at the table next to me and just started to strike up a conversation with me. And we chatted for about an hour about anything and everything. And just before she left, she said, what are those books that you're drowning yourself in? And why do you have so many tabs on them? I said, well, I'm studying for this exam and it's doing my head in. And I'm training to be a lawyer. And she said, oh, I've got a really good friend who owns a law firm in the city. I'll put in a word for you and see what happens. Now, she didn't get me the job, but she put me in touch with the partner who then gave me an interview, who then, it kind of like rolled it one thing into the other. And I ended up working there for 4 years.
Wow.
And I never saw her again. That was it. It was just this stranger that came into my life that gave me this gift. And, I obviously, took the action and I did what I needed to do and I showed up and I, aced the interview. But still, like, had I not met her, that would have never happened.
That's serendipity right there.
Yeah, it's just, and life is, I think, it does have those moments, but I looked up from my books. I engaged in a conversation with her. It wasn't that life was just like, plunk, here you go. No, there was a response. There was a cause and effect.
Yeah. Yeah. What I'm gathering from our discussion so far is that there is that element of personal effort. And of course, there is this other, what we can't define, kismet, luck, timing, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And the opportunities that we manifest or draw in are an interplay of both of them.
Absolutely.
To me, I'm realizing that divine timing, the formula somehow is like being ready, being open, seeing the cues, and then taking action despite of the fear and despite of whatever you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
Because you took action.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the upcoming launch of my new book titled The Nomadic Soul, a seeker's guide to finding a sense of self and belonging in the modern world, which highlights a profound yet often unexplored part of your identity that holds the key to everything from answering your biggest questions to finding deeper meaning and joy in everyday life. Visit thenomadicsoulbook.com to learn more, download a free chapter, or to buy a copy. What about those who missed the boat? What if, they said, oh, I should have gone for that job, or I should have, said yes to that date. What would you say to someone who's having regrets about missed opportunities, or, when time was in their favor? Like, what would you say to them?
I'd start from a place of self-love and self-compassion. Mm-hmm. I think it's not just for people who feel like they've missed out or made the wrong choice or, not had that lucky break, quote unquote. It's for people who can't, like I said earlier, can't see through the woods, experiencing terrible social injustices, are really up against it in war-torn zones, in the areas of natural disaster. The list goes on, and it's a reality of the world that we live in. It's a sad, awful reality. And I would say that in those moments, it's really hard to breathe when we enter a space of the shoulds. Mm-hmm. The shoulds, the would have, the could have. And in order to help us come back into a space of equilibrium, the smaller actions, the smaller things that you can affect just in your day, whether it's, coming through on what does it mean to look after yourself? What does it mean to feel better? How does that look for us? And what are the small steps that can be taken? How do we make the person next to us feel better that day? What are the areas that we have not stopped and paused and exercised a bit of stillness? Mm-hmm. And taking it from there, because life is life. It's unpredictable. Right. And having been through a space where I thought maybe this should have happened, I should have bought that house. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? How does that help anyone? Is what I would say.
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer. And I can speak to this because it's something that I suffered for a long time. And I had to begin with self-compassion and be like, that was a younger version of me who didn't know any better. But I also like to think that I wouldn't be the person who I am had my life followed a different trajectory. And that always helps me put things into perspective. Maybe in a parallel universe, I would have been doing something different, but this is my reality. I love the quote by Hafiz. He said, this is
all you
this
have
moment
is this moment.
All you have is this moment. And, I'm turning 42 next month, and I'm just, you think about these things, about the missed exits, or you could have taken that detour. And it's just like, you have to come to a place of peace and be like, okay, this is where I am right now. Let me look at the future, and also do an autopsy of where you went wrong, where your decisions could have been a bit better. Because sometimes I think it can be strategic to think about what made me hesitate, what made me not go for that when it was in front of me. So I think I like to do a little bit of self-examination without criticizing myself, so that I don't repeat the same mistake again.
So live and learn.
Yeah, live and learn, because that's all you can do, right? Yeah. So
I think it's important to reflect when is the right time. Because sometimes when you're in the moment, you have to let it happen. Like, I'm starting to learn how to camel ride, and the animals go very fast. Like, people don't know that, but camels can be very fast. And the other day happened to me that we were running fast, and then the camel stepped into a little rock, and he jolted. And I wanted to look back and check what happened, but I realized that he was running. So when I tried to look back to check what happened, he kept going forward. So I realized, whoa, if I stay too long looking back on whatever happened that made him jolted, I would fall, because I was not focused on whatever was happening right now. And it hit me that life is like that. Yes, it is important to check what happened in order for it not to happen again. But sometimes you just have to keep moving forward. Otherwise, you're just going to fall.
So true.
So I think it's like the perfect balance. And also I feel like when you're in the moment, in the situation, and spirits are very high and you're very involved, you cannot see from perspective.
So true.
Sometimes it takes a moment
to connect the dots, right? Yeah.
And detach a little bit from whatever is happening and whatever you're feeling, and then come a little later and reflect on it. Because in the moment, your feelings, your emotion, whatever is going on through the moment is carrying you away.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's even worse where you're in a place where you're not happy. That's not the case for me, but for some people, like, oh, my life is crap, and it could have been better if I'd done this, if I'd done that. And it's not a nice place to be in, So I also think timing can work against us. I mean, there's bad timing. And I don't mean to sound like a negative Nancy, but there's also bad timing. Accidents, being in the wrong car, being in the wrong plane, being in a room with somebody who's a threat to you, can do bad things to you. I think about that. As morbid as that sounds, it was not in their control, right? They just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I think just as timing can work in our favor, it can also work against us.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I'm going to address the elephant in the room, which is our biological clock. That's a timing thing.
Yeah.
And it's real.
Yeah.
And, for those who want to have children, everything the doctors will tell you is that, do it early. Are there exceptions? Yes. Do some women go on to have children in their late 40s? Yes. They are the exception. But the reality of our bodies is that there is a time restraint on it for a certain activity in life.
The window.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fertility window.
And that is a real thing. That's not a good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to call it, but it's a reality. And I don't know, maybe some action can help it.
Yeah.
It's not all dependent on you.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, you could adopt kids.
Absolutely.
Or you
Yeah,
could
there's so much option.
donate to a children's charity, an orphanage.
That is if somebody wants to have children, yes.
If someone wants to have children, like you said, you got to adjust based on, the cards that have been dealt in your current circumstances.
Yeah, so there is some time where it does serve to actually just see time for what it exactly is, which is that.
It's a currency. I see time as a currency sign. Yeah.
I grew up with my mom. It just reminded me of my mom. She kept saying at home, all my life I've heard her say this sentence. How is it possible that you see a plane crash on TV and then one person survives? And my mom said, it was not their time.
Yeah, there you go.
I grew up with that sort of thinking. My mom was always like, it's not the time. How come there's an accident and everybody dies in that bus except for one or two people? It was not their moment. Whenever your moment comes, it will be your moment.
Yeah.
So surrender and accept.
Yeah.
And I just realized that's how I grew up. I grew up with my mom saying that to me the whole time.
And does it serve you?
Yeah, because that takes away a lot of blaming.
Yeah.
A lot of self-blaming, a lot of shame, a lot of, oh my God, no, it was not my time. It was my time. And now I take it that way. Like I am an actor. You know how many auditions I have done for acting? And
I know it's hard.
It's really hard. And then when I don't get a role, I'm like, it was not meant to be for me. I think what could I have done better? But I don't fustigate. Is that a word for that?
Self-flagellate.
Yeah, thank you. That was Spanglish.
Flagellation.
I don't self-flagellate myself.
Yeah.
Did I do the best I could? Yes. Then, okay, whatever. It was not meant for me. Let's move on.
Yeah.
That's what I try to keep my spirits high.
I like that. So it's kind of like calms you down and it's like a salve.
Yeah.
I can see how it can help you frame it in a way that makes you feel better. And because when we deal with things like death and failure, we need to find something that can give us that comfort. And sometimes timing is a frame that we can use. Okay, so I want to end the conversation with talking about how we can empower people to create those opportunities regardless of their time. And I know you touched on this briefly about priming ourselves to spot opportunities. Another one is tapping into our intuition. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm thinking.
She cracks me up. Okay, while you think, I'll answer.
I just got red.
That's so funny.
Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, sorry. I got the giggles. What was the question?
How can we use our intuition as a source of guidance when it comes to picking up the cues?
Oh, I love this one.
Right,
it's so juicy because I'm really big on intuition.
Go for it.
How can we use it? Okay, speaking from personal experience, I find that it's like a muscle. Like anything else in life, intuition is really a muscle that we exercise, that we have built within us. You know, that built within our language, built within us, like physiologically, built in our gut, built in our brain, built in our heart, how our heart starts racing, or we get butterflies in our tummy, or, you know, some things just make us wonder and turn around and look the other way when we were just going in this direction. But in order to tap into that, we have to understand its language. And if we're so busy being the doers in life, it's very difficult, I've found, to let that voice be loud enough. So in order for our intuition to start to ignite and to reignite it, personally, I feel like there's a necessity to slow down, but slow down with awareness and practice it on a daily basis with the smallest things, with things that are super trivial, having fun with it, playing games, just going out there and really allowing it to have its own voice, because it will whisper, but only when there's enough quiet around us.
I love that.
100%. Like when I started practicing mindfulness, my life changed completely. The first time I went to a temple to practice, I was supposed to be there for 1 week. I stayed for 3 weeks because I just started getting to know myself in a deeper level. And that only happens when you hold the space for it, when you do things slow. When you eat, they taught me mindful eating, and as you take a bite, and then you try to bite for 40 times, to chew for 40 times.
Wow.
You take a bite, you leave the fork on the plate, you chew for 40 times, and then you swallow. And only after you have swollen, you can take the fork again and try the next bite. And when you slow down so much, you hear everything, you sense everything, you sense every flavor, every note, every texture, every part of whatever it is that you're eating. And I think that life's the same.
Yeah.
We can only tap to our intuition when we really slow down and let space for it. And of course, it's hard these days. We live in fast-paced societies, cities, but I think there's a bit of responsibility, right?
I think so. I love what you shared, because it's only when we slow down that we can notice the subtle signs and the subtle shifts that can kind of signal that there is something that we need to look at here. It's only when we're in that headspace that we can do it, and that's so key. I would add to that. I mean, I'm going to take a little bit more cerebral approach here. I would say gaining more experience in the area of your interest. So for instance, like an investor, someone like a Warren Buffett, he has learned his trade so well that he's become intuitive about it. He knows when is the right state of the market to, put money in, and he knows when it's like a good time to hold back. So I think intuition becomes more honed when we learn the ins and outs of something, that we're so, like, we know, like, this can even be applied to relationships. When we know someone so well, we're intuitive about their mood, what they're thinking. You can see when something is off. Where does that come from? Because you know their patterns. Intuition to me is about pattern recognition. You have enough data to know that something has changed, or this is a good time to talk to this person. I'm sure you've experienced this. Like, you want to talk to them about something that might be a little contentious, or something that you feel might ruffle their feathers, but it's like, oh, I better not talk to them about it now. They're not looking good. So it's, I think intuition comes with experience, education, learning about your craft. Like, I'm sure you, Laura, as a presenter, you're very attuned to an audience by now. Like, okay, they're not feeling it. I gotta change the tempo, or I gotta say something different to capture them. That's your intuition. That's come from doing it so many times. Experience, right?
I mean, of course, the first times you don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. But I'm sure as you continued, you gained that extra sensory ability to read the room.
Yeah, 100%.
But is that her intuition, or is that just her experience married with being able to have a good sense of nervous system reading? That's what I would just put out there, because for me, when I think of intuition, yes, it is experience, and there is that scientific side of it, which I would correlate to nervous system regulation and being in a place of ventral in order to be able to read the cues and be perceptive of it. And then there's this inner knowing when you just sense something that you cannot see and you have not experienced. And I feel like there's a gray area between the two. You know, there's that sense of what is experience and what is intuition, and sometimes they overlap and they come together really beautifully. Like how we know I was giggling when you were talking about how you know when someone's like what someone's thinking, because my husband sometimes turns around to me and he's like, "How can you read my mind? Like, how did you just do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just knew that that's what you were going to say, or that's what you wanted."
Yeah.
But that's also because I've experienced him and I know him and I've spent time with him, and you know, it's just there's so much love for him. So that one would argue it's that. I'm not a mind reader. I don't sit there with a crystal ball going like, this is what Giuseppe's going to say today. But coming back to the reality of how we cross them over, and that like that inner knowing of just, I feel like there's a bit of magic to it.
I think so. Yeah, there's definitely a magical element to it, but I think our gut instinct, I like to call it a gut instinct, that comes from the magical aspect, but also some amount of pattern recognition.
Yeah.
I think that's a wrap, ladies. Thank you so much again for being here and for sharing your thoughts and being fully present and sharing pearls of wisdom with me and the audience.
Thank you so much. It's so lovely being with you guys.
I know it's bittersweet because it's the last of our 3-part podcast discussion series, but I have no doubt that both of you will continue to contribute tremendously on your own platforms. So
thank you, Seline.
Thank you
good
so
luck
much.
with that.
I've really enjoyed this series, and you know, all good things come in threes.
That's true. That is true.
I didn't know that saying, but I'm gonna take it.
I don't know if I just made that up, but I just thought there's 3 of us and we just had threes. So that's what I'm saying.
No, thank you so much, ladies. It was so nice being with you for all these 3 episodes, and it was fun. It was such a learning and growing experience, and I've learned so much from you. So thank you so much for being here and for making it happen.
Yeah, thanks, Seline.
You're welcome. All right, so if you wish to continue following Laura and Sahar's journey, be sure to visit their own individual platforms. So Sahar's podcast is called the Mindful Makers Podcast, and Laura has her speaking services and programs. The links to their platforms will be in the show notes.